Hey guys, welcome to Punky's World. Time to get real. Something's been on my mind lately. There's a commercial. It's a jewelry commercial where one sister says, "I always knew I had a sister. She didn't know." And they connected and they got this shared piece of jewelry. Like they each got one or something. I don't know. And oh, that's great. And it made me think of my sister. I always knew she didn't. Just like a commercial. I have waited almost a year. I've documented this journey. To meet her. And she still says she's not ready. And it's breaking my heart. Anyway, I called her aunt, my bonus aunt Susie, and I said, I have an idea. Could you ask her for her mailing address? And I will send her a letter. It will be less intrusive into her world. It'll be less, how did I put it? It'll be easier for her to digest what's happening, you know? Everybody is different, and I understand that. Because if she'd have called me out of the blue, I would have been like, when do you want to meet? Because that's who I am. You know? Unfortunately, not everybody's that way. Sorry, that's with my fingernail. It's nerves. So I've written a letter and I'm waiting for the address. I couldn't have been happier when I found her. In fact, I called her and I didn't get a hold of her. It was her cell phone. And she saw the number and she called me back. I just remembered, this is really you, you know? I was almost crying. I said, you don't know what this means to me. To talk to you. After all the daydreams. You know? Because I remember sitting in the car as a kid. Driving down the road. Looking out the window and daydreaming about the day I would meet my sister. And nothing. You know, so to have, and then I told her that on the phone, you know, I've daydreamed about this. She said her name on her birth certificate is Wilson. My father is listed on her birth certificate. But she was told it could be him or Gary Grondin. I've looked at her. The girl's not a Grondin. As a matter of fact, her sister didn't realize that, not my sister's sister, her aunt, her mother's sister, didn't even realize that my father and her sister were legally married. I sent her a copy. I took a picture of the marriage certificate when I got a copy of it from the town hall. And so she didn't have siblings any more than I do. Well, she has an older half sister and a younger half brother, I guess, from her mother. But I was told my whole life, you have a sister, this is her name, she's older than you, you know? And I told her, I said, your father, our father, loved you. Never stopped thinking about you, even though he never met you. Her mother left him when she was about 5 months pregnant. Telling him she wasn't his, when in fact she didn't know that. And in fact, in the divorce papers, it says if you marry within 10 years, you can ask for custody of your daughter. And it was like, really? And I almost think that she was hurt that he didn't, and I wanted to explain to her why. It wasn't in her best interest, based on his knowledge of her situation at that time. At that time, my parents believed she had been with the same family since she had been taken from her mother. My parents also believed that later on she was reunited with her mother, that she was put back into the custody of her mother. She never was. She was adopted. And my mother thought she used to see her at bingo. But that wasn't her. I also always knew that she had a sister, Lisa, that was a couple of years older than her, that my father loved as his own. Probably one of the reasons I got married, truthfully. My father loved kids. Always. Terrible twos didn't bother him that much. When you get older, and you can be mouthy, then he didn't have as much patience. But with the little ones, And that confused her sister. I remember getting to talk to her as well. She said, I don't get it. I was only like 2 when they were married. I don't understand how he could have had those feelings for me. He didn't know my dad, you know. But he adored you and he thought of you often. It always seemed to me that he thought of her as his daughter, even though she was definitely not. She was already there when he got with her mother. But, itchy. The Itchy and Scratchy Show. I think rises. I can turn it enough to show you. Anyway, I think she was rather dumbfounded. It was almost like somebody cared about me, you know, with a question mark, you know, because um, I don't think she was raised by her mother either. And her mother had a son later, and he wasn't raised by her either. So, you know, it's funny. The other man that could have been her dad, I knew his entire family. That's where I go for holidays, is to his nephew's house. So, Diane and Barry's his nephew. Gary was his father's brother. It's weird how that happens. So anyway, so my parents made the decision not to go for custody, and they talked about it. And you know something? Had they taken custody of her, I bet my mother would have adopted her in a heartbeat. And in spite of some of the turbulence early on, she would have been loved. I guess she was loved by her adoptive family. I guess they were good people, which is good. Funny thing is, they never asked my father to sign his rights away for her to be adopted. Now, I realize back then they would have had to do some kind of DNA test, well, whatever they had for a paternity test, to determine which man had to sign over his rights, and maybe they just decided not to do it. Like I said, after seeing her, picture speaking to her, I have no doubt. My mother went back and forth. I don't know that my father wavered on it. I just needed to voice what I'm feeling. I don't know if a letter's going to help. I'm certainly praying that it does. Because I want to know my sister. And I told her in the letter, which I need the address for, that even if I could meet you one time, it would be a dream come true. You know, if I could meet her, I'd give her a great big hug. You know, show her some pictures, talk to her just once. It would be amazing. Then my dream would have fully come true. You know, my daydreams. Excuse me. You know, I don't think people like my father's ex realize what they do when they do things like just walk away with a kid. She was pregnant, but you know what I mean. Then the kid gets taken away from you anyway, and she did meet her mother. I know that she searched for dad at one time, but the name Robert Wilson, yeah, there's about 100 million of them. And that's not even an exaggeration if you went through the entire country. There probably is 100 million of them. But it's difficult to narrow it down if you don't know what you're looking for. And she seemed excited that she had an uncle. And Uncle David was thrilled. You know, he wanted to meet her. Still does. And he would tell her the same thing I did. My brother never stopped loving you, even though he never got to lay eyes on you. That wasn't his fault. He didn't leave her. And that's what I want her to understand. Our father did not leave her. He wasn't given the choice. Don't get me wrong. At the time, it was probably for the best. How do I explain this? our father had some demons to overcome, which he did successfully for the rest of his life when I was 5 years old. Um, which would have made her about 12. I'm trying to think. No, she's 10 years older than me. Wow. So that would have made her 15. And I would go through the years, and I always knew how old my sister was. Actually, she's 9 years older than I am, so it would have made her 14. I would go through the years, and I knew how old my sister was, you know. And like I said, it was not something that was kept from me. You see these things on Unsolved Mysteries where the parent dies and the kid goes back and goes, "Look at these pictures." Or there was one little girl, one woman who remembered when she was a little girl that her father had given her a name for her doll that he gave her. She used the name, but she thought it was odd. That where did he come up with that name? And later on, she found pictures of him with a different baby. Well, he had been in the military, I guess, and had a relationship, but the relationship didn't work out because I don't know. Because he had been in the military, and so and was traveling or whatever. But he had another daughter. And so, but instead of telling his daughter, "You have a sister," and just being honest, like my parents were, he gave her the name for her dolly. And I've seen other cases where, excuse me, people as adults will find pictures years later and go, "Who is that?" And they find out it's their own sibling. And it's like, maybe kind of should have told somebody, you know? I guess for me, I don't understand that because I was always told, you know? I don't want her to understand that. I always knew. And I think in some ways she's hurt. But at the same time, I want to say she has to understand, but she doesn't have to understand. There was a lot beyond people's control going on. So, and my mother used to say, I've seen your sister at bingo, but, with her mother. It just all made them think that at some point she was given back to her mother. That wasn't her. And they thought she had one arm that didn't work. It wasn't her. So there was a lot of misinformation. Not purposefully by my parents, but misinformation that they got. Have a great day, guys. I'm back, guys. That was my neighbor bringing me back the book. I have an errand to run. Thank you so much for joining me. When I get back, we'll do that cleaning job. Please subscribe. We're trying to get to 100. Have a wonderful day, as I was saying before I had to run there. God bless you. And I'll see you later on. Bye, guys.